Are live today on stress awareness. If you haven't had a chance to meet me before, my name is Charlie. I'm the deputy lead here at Isopia, and what that means is that my role is majoritively looking after our team, but also I've got vast experience in running workshops as well. Otherwise, we have.
I'm Naomi. I'm a wellbeing coach here at Isopia. I've been here for about 7 months now.
And what we're planning to do with you guys today, we're just going to do a half-hour live or so where we're giving the wider community an opportunity to potentially join our session, to bounce around some ideas, to gain some insight into the world of mental health, and potentially, as well, if all goes well, take away some really useful tools and tricks that we might be able to implement into our own lives to, in this case, better manage stress. What you're going to find is that as we go through the live today, we're going to be putting a few captions up and we're going to be having a little discussion around that. But in particular, if there's anything that you feel like you want to contribute, any questions, any thoughts, you want to answer the questions yourselves, and please do. We're also going to be paying particular attention to the comments as they come through and bouncing around with that as well. So without further ado, should we get into it?
Yes, do it.
Very nice. So our first question that we've got today is, what is stress? In my experience, it's a thing that actually a lot of people have different understandings about. And, in my experience, stress is a little bit of a blanket term that potentially we can use to describe a whole lot of situations. For instance, if life balance is going a little bit wrong, I'm stressed. If I'm feeling anxious about a very specific situation.
Anxiety has a massive role to play in stress, I think. Definitely for me anyway.
It does as well. If I'm having conflict in a relationship, I describe myself as stressed. But sometimes we can kind of use that word so often that we kind of lack a little bit of clarity about what it might actually mean. So in my experience, stress is kind of a combination of a load of different factors. And some of that can be potentially life events that are going on. Some of that can be related as well to your physical health, potentially in the way that you're either exercising, you've got poor physical health, or other elements like that. But also, as we're going to be exploring as well, our thoughts and our mental health as well have a huge role to play in it.
The lack of sleep as well is massive, I think, in stress. I think I get extra stressed when I'm tired, and my patience is really low as well. So I'm extra stressed when I haven't had very much sleep and not sleeping properly. So that can be a massive thing.
That's a huge thing. I don't know if you guys are going to identify anything potentially that contributes to your stress. It might be worth mentioning it as well. I think it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on this in a second, Naomi. But in my experience, stress is something that is primarily linked to survival. It is a fact that often isn't very much recognized or talked about, but almost everything that we feel, everything that we do is in some way designed to protect us, but also to help us survive. And actually, stress, if it's kind of well managed and there's not too much of it, can be a really positive thing as well.
Can be, definitely. It can drive you to but then you can sort of push too far, can't it? Get too stressed, and that drive ends up toxic and becomes damaging.
Yeah, exactly. It's that careful balance, isn't it?
Definitely.
We recognize that we need a bit of stress in our lives, because otherwise, I know this is the case for me.
Exactly.
I would never do anything. I'd spend all my time at home laying in bed. There would be no kind of drive for me to do anything. But unfortunately, when it isn't managed exactly how it is that we'd like, it kind of tips over. And at that point, rather than motivating us towards achieving different goals, different things that we need to do, it actually has the opposite effect. It stops us dead in our tracks. So it's a potent thing, but also, it can be a really destructive force as well if it's left unmanaged. So when I'm feeling stressed, I know that for myself, the very first thing that kind of gives me an indication is how I'm feeling in myself, in my body. Is that the same for you, Naomi?
Yeah, definitely. Like I get some sort of like a tremor, and sometimes I get a stammer. If I'm really, really stressed and it's been prolonged for a long period of time, especially if it's been over a matter of sort of weeks and months, and it's built up, I end up getting a bit of a stammer in my speech. There's lots of different symptoms of things and signs when you know that you're becoming really, really stressed, and sort of becomes chronic, doesn't it?
And if it's chronic, it's going to start to affect your physical health all round as well.
Yeah.
We hear this a lot of the time, but a lot of heart disease is actually really closely linked with stress. I don't usually bring my dad into this, but I'm going to on this occasion. It's bold. I really hope you're not watching this back, Dad. But he's had a very stressful life, certainly around his work. He's spent a lot of time working on the stock exchange It's
wow, yeah.
really, really high
Yeah, I
pressure
bet.
environment, dealing with millions and millions of pounds potentially at any one go. And I'm glad my dad's got out of that game now. He's actually
Yeah.
feeling a lot better himself. But he went grey quite early on in his life. So
Yeah,
some of those physical things.
definitely.
But I know for myself, potentially a bit of stammering for you. For me, my heart rate might increase. I definitely sweat, dare I say.
Yeah.
Not the most attractive of qualities, but there we go. It is the way that it is. But also, might start to get a little bit flushed, might feel like avoiding situations as well. And I know that we kind of touched on it, and you did as well, Naomi, where it's so closely linked to anxiety.
Massively.
Often, recognizing those feelings of stress early on can be almost like a precursor or an indication, maybe, that there's something else at play.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I agree.
And this is something I was just talking to another deputy upstairs. She was saying that for herself, she knows that when she's starting to feel stressed, that then has a big impact on her anxiety, her OCD. And if we're not necessarily managing it, it can actually be one of the primary reasons that we can fall into and potentially stay in any common mental well-being problem as well.
Escalates every other emotion that's sort of like, that's becoming toxic, or you're struggling with. Everything else becomes sort of triggered, and the effects of those things just become magnified, don't they, when you're stressed?
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly.
And anxious.
I like that. It's almost like a magnifying glass, isn't
Literally,
it?
yeah,
That's
it is, yeah.
A literal magnifying glass.
And the more and more stress that piles on, it's sort of like a buckaroo kind of effect, isn't it? You sort of end up putting more and more things on, and more things start stressing you out, and becomes unmanageable. Yeah,
exactly. So on that note, I'm just going to ask a question to you guys. What is stress for you? Where is it that you might see it in your lives as well? And more importantly as well, is there anything that you're noticing potentially that might be contributing to your stress? Because we will explore this in a minute. It'll be good to hear some answers before we crack on with that. But what is it that actually starts stress in your life? Where stress is so closely linked with anxiety, potentially anger, shame, so many other things that might be going on, there are often a few common things that might arise when we're feeling stressed. And if anyone that's done our anxiety workshop, you might already know quite a lot about this. If you haven't, then we'll tell you about it now. It is very closely linked to our fight, flight, and freeze response as well. So again, if we're feeling that kind of unmanageable stress, we might notice ourselves getting so many of those symptoms that we were talking about, the ones that are really closely linked to anxiety as well. But then if it's really unmanaged, we might find ourselves becoming confrontational. So it might be that we start to have arguments, we start to take our stress out on ourselves as well. And we might go into flight mode. What does flight mode look like for you, Naomi?
Literally burying my head in the sand. I think that looks like for me. Not looking at anything. When I get letters through the door, putting them in the cupboard, not looking at them. Running away from a lot of things, and making things smaller than they actually are to minimize my stress.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of avoidance, isn't it?
Literally, yeah.
A bit of avoidance, yeah.
A lot of that.
Spot on with that. And I know for myself, that can look like spending a lot of time in bed as well. Yeah. I might have
isolating.
Yeah, isolating, not seeing friends is a huge one. A job list that's just growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
And again, burying my head in the sand, choosing to ignore it, but only to find that actually my stress doesn't necessarily get any better.
Exactly.
It just increases and increases as well. And then the very last major response that we can have when we're feeling stressed as well, and this is if we're feeling stressed really acutely in any moment, is freeze. And freeze might be when we go a little bit quiet. It might be when we stammer. Yeah. Potentially as well. Yeah. I'm thinking that.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of that as well.
A little bit of that.
Definitely, yeah.
And it's when we find it really, really hard to think. Really, really hard to get our words out.
Just shut off, don't you, in a way, I think. It comes to the point where you just completely shut off.
Yeah, that's it. Actually mentioning shutting off there, I don't know if there's something that you've observed, but I know a few of the members that come through our service talk about feeling so stressed that they actually go numb as well.
Just don't feel anything. Like it's sort of like a coping mechanism, isn't it? It's sort of like a detachment from everything, and just stop feeling anything at all, and it's just
exactly
for a long period of time as well. Some people, I think I definitely had a long phase of that a few years ago, just feeling completely numb for a long time.
Exactly. And that's the hardest thing, isn't it? Where when we're feeling numb, we don't necessarily know what it is that's going on. We can't identify it. So sometimes we can struggle to actually grasp the concept and move on with it. That's it. I think something that we have to establish at this point is that stress is a really gnarly thing.
It is.
We do not like stress. It is unpleasant.
Toxic.
Toxic, strong word. I think so. And actually, kind of on that level there, where it's toxic and we're not managing it, it can feel a little bit like a disease. This thing that we're struggling to shake, it invades all of us and it starts to dictate the way that we live as well. So we've got to understand it's probably something that we want to be looking at as well. So I have noticed that we've got a couple of comments.
Nice.
Very nice. So I'll read the first one if you want to do the second. We've got Kirsty saying, my stress is either emotional triggers or sensory stuff as well. Very good. Very good. Well, I mean, not good, but it's good that you've recognised it.
Self-aware, yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people around, especially after COVID, especially for me, that was a massive trigger for me for stress, and having to go to Tesco's and things like that and going back out in public again, that was really caused a lot of stress for me. So that's just being around people in general, and really stressful.
Yeah, I get that. And actually kind of focusing on the sensory stuff, I know we did a really good live last week on the topic of autism and ADHD and neurodiversity, so please watch that back if you haven't already and you'd like to get a bit more info on that. But actually sometimes if there's a lot of things that are happening in your environment, it can really overwhelm the senses as well.
Massively.
It's good. And of course emotional kind of stuff coming into it, and often our stress can kind of act as a mask for a lot of other emotions that are going on as well. Brilliant comment, thank you. Otherwise, we've got the second comment.
Oh, I've got another one from Sarah. She says, hello, Naomi and Charlie. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah. Very nice to have you. Brilliant, thank you. All right, so we shall move on at this point to the second question that we've got lined up. Why do we feel stress?
Why do we feel stress?
If it is such a negative feeling and it causes so much disjoint and anguish in our lives, what is its point?
I feel like it's kind of a little bit like our feeling that we're unable to cope with the situation, feeling of being unable to cope with what's going on. I feel like that's generally a lot of the time for me what I'm feeling underneath all the symptoms and things is I feel like I'm unable to deal with things, especially responsibility, the big stuff. Telephone calls, I find those really difficult, but a lot of that is all based around that.
So responsibility, telephone calls coming into it as well. Loads of different things can start to contribute. I've just seen another comment that's come in from Chris, so I'll read that. Hello everyone, got stressed yesterday. I had 3 things in my routine fail. So a few things not going according to plan. Internet disconnected. You may not know this, but we had that about 20 minutes ago. It's fine. We got that sorted. Appointments rescheduled. All right. So changes that, and a change in benefits as well. So you're talking about, you had something planned that's not going ahead, the uncertainty around what to do with the time that you've just got from a rearranged appointment as well. Maybe it was a really important appointment that you were looking forward to, and a change in financial situation as well. Huge.
Massive stress.
Exactly.
Like, isn't it? All angles as well. Bless you.
Yeah, an awful lot going on there. A lot to cope with in one day, I would say as well. The stress of it caused my anxiety feelings to spike, so I'm linked to anxiety there as well. I was feeling totally burnt out and had to have a nap. Physical consequences happening there.
Definitely. I think when I'm definitely emotionally drained and triggered left, right and centre and feeling really stressed, I shut off as well in that way. I end up using sleep as sort of like a coping mechanism. I'm just like, I need to just shut off and just not sort of, I use that as a coping mechanism, always have done. Some people are the opposite way around, they find it difficult to sleep when they're feeling stressed. But I'm actually the opposite and need to nap just like yourself. So yeah, I get that. I understand that.
Makes sense as well. And just kind of touching again on that topic, why is it that we feel stressed? There are actually so many different reasons why it is that we can feel it, and in particular a few of them can be kind of the physical side of things. So maybe we're not looking after ourselves, maybe we're not sleeping particularly well, maybe we're not eating well, maybe we're not looking after our physical needs. There is the emotional side as well. So there could be something that's happened, something that's changed, something that's almost triggered us, if you will, to go into a state of feeling one emotion or another. But also there is the mental side. And the mental side, I think, is something that we're going to explore in a little while in particular.
I think realizing what you are and aren't in control of as well is really, really helpful. That's something that helps me a lot of the time. Really realizing what I am and aren't in control of, because a lot of the time we can get so worked up and overwhelmed with things that we feel like we're in control of, but actually we're not. It's like when I go to work in the mornings, on my way into work, I feel extra stressed because I've got half an hour to get to work. I have my foot on the clutch and we're moving about like 2 miles an hour, and my anxiety is getting more and more overwhelmed. This went on for about a month, and I was just so stressed behind the steering wheel on the way to work. And then it got to the point where I was like, actually, I'm not in control of this situation right now. And it doesn't matter how upset I get, how angry I get, how much I get worked up. It's not going to change the situation. And it instantly de-escalated me. And I was like, I might as well just relax and just calm down, do some deep breaths before I go into work, because me getting worked up, me getting so anxious and upset wasn't actually serving me in any way, shape or form. And I wasn't in control of that situation. So it was actually, pointless.
Yeah.
So it can be, it can be really helpful to be aware of what you are and aren't in control of, because a lot of the time we get ourselves into a bit of a mess when we're not in control of something.
Exactly, and that is, I think that's a really, really important thing to be saying there as well. A lot of the reason that we become stressed is because where we're putting our focus and our attention. Where is it that we're adding meaning? Where is it that we're putting all of our energies on? So I'll just give a very brief example here. I know the news could be something that is particularly stressful,
massively triggering,
particularly stressful, and most of all potentially right now as well, with everything, all the uncertainty that's going on in Europe. And actually sometimes putting our focus in the areas that we don't have control over, focusing on it, applying all of our thoughts to it as well, can in itself be enough to put us into a really unpleasant state of stress.
Hugely. I think that goes back to what you focus on expands, doesn't it? The more you focus on something, the bigger it becomes. We need to start focusing our energies on positive things and things that we are in control of, things that we can manage. That's what we need to be putting our energy into, because that's inevitably what's going to be serving us.
Exactly.
Making us feel a lot better.
That's it. So there's a bit of work to be done around that, isn't there? Putting our focus and our attention on things that we can start to influence as well. I'm just going to finish reading the comment. So going on to Kirsty, who says, we need the process of stress to help know how to respond to situations. Mwah! Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Stress will kick off the fight or flight mode. Absolutely right on that one, Kirsty. And this is something that unfortunately we don't necessarily recognize, and unfortunately we're not taught it enough from an early age, I would say. But every emotion, everything that we are feeling at any given time is trying to be helpful.
Trying to keep us alive.
It's trying to keep us alive.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's misguided, and
especially
the painful emotions in particular can be misguided as well. But everything that we feel is trying to tell us something. For instance, if we're feeling angry in a situation, it might be telling us that something has happened that goes against our core values, something that we truly believe to be right.
Our boundaries have been crossed.
Our boundaries have been crossed. It's a really basic example, but I consider myself quite British in some of the values and the traditions that I like. I think a few of us might be able to agree with this one, but queue jumping, right?
Yeah, okay.
An absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
We stand in line, we have turns, we move forward, and that's a lovely system. Everyone can agree to that. If someone queue jumps, I get angry.
Yeah.
And if I were to just buy into that anger, put all my attention on it, what did you say? What we focus on expands.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could actually overwhelm me. But that in itself, I'm feeling angry. It's telling me that something that I don't agree with has happened. We might feel shame if we do something that goes against our values or steps outside of social norms. We might feel anxiety if we're in a situation, just like Kirsty was saying there, where we might be fearing for our survival in some way, shape or form, and we might feel fight, flight, fight. But underneath stress, there are emotions. Sometimes they're hard to recognize. We have to acknowledge that. But also, if we can start to understand the source of our stress, put our focus and attention on the things that we can control. Most importantly, there are plenty of answers. So I can see we've had a few more comments. So I'm just going to skip down at this point to Sarah, who says, I've joined Slimming World this week, and it is the first focus.
Nice.
Yes, I like that. I've had recently that is healthy. All right, so you're doing something for yourself here.
That's really, really amazing. Well done, Sarah. That's great. That's really like powerful, and that's really good step in the right direction. That's going to do wonders for your confidence and self-esteem as well. That's amazing.
I honestly, I'm so impressed and happy with that.
It's a really nice,
So,
healthy focus, like you said as well. It's a really nice way of putting it. I like that.
It's something that's in your control.
Mm.
It's something that's going to help with the physical health. The confidence and self-esteem are going to start to brew a little bit because of that as well. That is an amazing step.
Yeah.
Talk about taking power back from stress, eh?
I like that a lot.
Yeah, very, very, very good. Big fan of that. So, I'm aware that we've got about 10 minutes, so what we're going to do is we're going to skip ahead to the last question at this point. And of course, if you've been with this Ropey before, you know a bit about us. We like to be solution focused, and we also always want to create a really nice, pleasant space for us to be able to explore the practicalities of it. So far, we've established stress is a nightmare. Nobody enjoys it.
Yeah.
There are plenty of reasons for why stress can creep in. Namely, it might be something to do with your social situation, it could be physical health, it could be something to do with your processing, your thoughts, your emotional state as well. But we're also starting to recognize that everything that we feel is trying to tell us that something can change, needs to change, and that is the empowering part. So what can we do to change?
You're looking at me.
I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. But I know there are a few things that we can potentially do so. For instance, I know that exactly like you've been saying there, Sarah, for yourself, joining Weight Watchers can be a thing. You know, looking after our physical health. I know that we can also start to reconnect and socialize, and that's something that I'd like to come on to. But in particular, I know that there's a fair amount of work that we can do around
our thoughts.
Exactly.
I think for me, definitely, I feel like we can de-escalate ourselves a lot with our thoughts and change the way that we're thinking. I've just got a little bit of something that I wanted to read quickly, which I found really powerful actually. Going to go with it. So it's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease when we're looking at the long-term effects. So as human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. When we think about our problems, we turn on these chemicals. So that means that our thoughts can make us sick. So if our thoughts can make us sick, is it possible that our thoughts can make us well? And the answer is yes, absolutely. That's where we need to start, I think, a lot of the time, is thinking about things in a much more positive way, or just changing our perspective on how we're thinking about things, because it's so easy to think negatively a lot of the time, and it's sort of just automatic. I think I definitely feel that. I don't know if you, Charlie, that the negative thoughts are much easier to sort of just cling to and go with. Whereas the positive ones are quite a lot more difficult to get to. But the more we can start thinking in that way and changing our thoughts around into a positive way of thinking instead of negative, what you focus on expands. So if you focus on that and start thinking in that way, it will become habitual, it will become a habit, and inevitably you'll be making a new pathway, a much more positive pathway and a different way of thinking, and it will change the way that you feel. Inevitably, if you can change the way you're thinking, you can change the way you feel. And I've actually, I've done that myself, and it works. It really does.
So I'm, for those of you that know me, I'm a huge lover of motivational quotes, and something I really love this from what Naomi just said there. If our thoughts can make us unwell, recognizing that they can, our thoughts can also make us well.
Yeah, just having that awareness alone is pretty powerful.
Yeah,
I think, because sometimes we don't know that, we kind of forget that. And just having that awareness that actually, we can make us well. If we can make ourselves unwell with our thoughts, then we can make ourselves well with our thoughts too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a huge component of managing stress is actually having that awareness of, maybe it's putting focus on things that we can't control, maybe on negativity, not capturing the whole picture that might be making us unwell, and being able to consider the bigger picture to bring it back from negativity to a dose of realism and maybe even positivity. That is helpful as well. But there are more things that we can do besides just managing our thoughts.
Definitely.
Recognizing that all stress is trying to communicate to us something. Maybe it's our thoughts, but maybe it's our life situations that need to change. And I know that a huge belief of this Roper in particular revolves around life balance. And one of our really strong ethics is that actually a lot of people can start to become well when they're leading an unbalanced life. So maybe they don't have enough time with friends or family, maybe they're overworking, but also connecting, more importantly, with true meaning and value in life.
Definitely.
For instance, if your routine consists of going to job that you don't like,
Mm-hmm.
coming home and spending too much time on your own, and then maybe turning to drink or drugs, for instance, to kind of cover up those feelings and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if you presented to somewhere like here potentially, or somewhere in your life, saying that you were feeling stressed. Yeah.
Anxious and depressed.
Exactly, stressed, anxious, depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And although there is a huge onus on thoughts, and I think it is really important, we also want to make sure that we're implementing positive change outside of our inner dialogue, inside of our mind, but also in our day-to-day life as well.
Mm-hmm.
I see that we've got a couple of comments. Should we have a little read?
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got Kirsty, who says, when we're triggered, we should be using a balance of our soothe, yes, drive, yes, and threat reaction functions. I think we've got a guru.
I think we do. I think
we got a guru.
I like it a lot.
Very, very nice and very well said, Kirsty. Spot on. Because a lot of us have had life experience that have changed our practice of balance. We generally don't soothe in moments of stress. Exactly. We might do things that make us feel okay in that exact moment, but actually don't solve the issue in the long term. So we need to practice soothing in those moments, which is when mindfulness comes in. Taking a breath, going for a walk by the sea, listening to music, writing, connecting with loved ones.
Perfect.
I love that. Recognizing the stress, detaching ourselves from it. Our thoughts are not facts necessarily, but then also making sure to implement some of the things that we know that will soothe us in that moment.
I think I heard one time actually a couple of months ago, somebody said to soothe your mind with your body. So using your body to soothe your mind. Sometimes it's difficult to use your mind to soothe your mind. So use your body to soothe your mind. And they talk about, like you were just saying, deep breaths, out for 7, in for 5. Lots of meditation and things like that can really, really help. But just breath work in general can just be really, really useful to calm your heart rate and sort of get that stress response down. Basically, you're trying to reverse the stress response, and a lot of that can be done through breath work, and going for a walk, doing some focusing on self-care, really.
Exactly. All of it is incredibly important. Actually, the mind and body are connected. And if our mind goes, we get those physical reactions as well. And it doesn't have to be this that we solve immediately.
Exactly.
Sometimes working on this
first.
Exactly. It's like backwards engineering is what it is.
Like it.
Solve problem B, problem A fix itself as well.
Definitely.
That's really, really good. And a couple more comments we've had. Thanks, guys. It's taken me months to get to this point where I feel comfortable joining a group. Really, really, even more so impressive that you've taken the step, if you ask me. But I did it, so I'm happy. I use tools that Isropia have taught me to get there, so thank you. You're very welcome, Sarah, but nobody's made that change besides you. And I think it's amazing how you've managed to find that courage within yourself as well to overcome some of those anxieties. It's such a strong, what's the word I'm looking for? Attribute. I'll go with. And it's something that's going to make the difference between potentially staying in stress in the situation or getting to a place where you actually have that control back as well. Very nice. There was one point that I wanted to touch on in particular, and I noticed the last thing that Kirsty kind of mentioned there, connecting with loved ones. And you might not be aware of this, but it is actually Stress Awareness Month. It is. And I know that before we did this live, I had a little search to see some of the things that were going on. And there is a wonderful website called www.stress.org. And what they're really wanting to put a lot of emphasis on at the minute is actually the role that community can play in managing stress. So that is to say, connecting with loved ones, speaking up to your boss, potentially speaking to friends and seeking the support of the loved ones that you have in your lives.
I don't think it's just support though as well. You have the support is really important, but also perspective. I think I can get so stuck in my head in a certain way of thinking, and it becomes like a fact to me. Then if I speak to my best friend, she'll go, "Have you thought of it like this?" And I'll go, "Oh no, I haven't thought of it like that actually." And it's such a relief to sort of think, "Oh, there is another way I can think about this." Or maybe there is a different angle that I can go at to reduce my stress with the situation. Perspective as well as support, so important, and can be shifted actually quite quickly, perspective, especially for myself.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to make. And again, another motivational quote, or corny, definitely corny at the very least. A problem shared is a problem halved as well. And a lot of the time we can carry around our stress. We get so much that we don't necessarily know what to do about it. but actually seeking the support of those that are experiencing similar things, or even just a willing ear, can have some of the most potent and beneficial effects on managing our stress and our mental well-being as well.
I think also writing things down is something that's really helpful for me, because in my head it can feel like there's like 1,000 things in my head that I'm stressed about and worried about. But then when I write them down on pen and paper, there's actually like 5 or 6 things, and it puts it into sort of, what's the word? It just puts it into perspective. Actually, it's sort of like what's actually going on, because it can become much bigger in your head than it actually is in reality. So I think it can be helpful to write down the things that you're worried about, and then sort of like off the side of that, sometimes I'll put one thing that I can do for each thing just to reduce my anxiety with that thing, and that can be a really helpful tool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whether we do it for ourselves in writing or speak to another to get that clarity, it is some of the most powerful work that we can do. So, on that note, what I do want to say, recognizing the importance of community, is Seropia is all about community. If you're already a member with us, then you'll understand that already intrinsically. It is about that community that you can find with like-minded individuals who also have some of those shared experiences that can give you that same clarity and support in an ongoing sense. And if you've connected with anything that we've spoken about today, and you're not necessarily with us, then you can always self-refer by calling us on the number that you've got on the screen there. And if you want to learn more about what it is that we can do, please visit our website, www.isseropia.uk. It is worth saying that what we've done today is just the smallest of snippets. It really is tiny compared to that support that we can give you in-house. So please, if there's anything that you'd like to discuss, please make sure to give us a call. And on that note, we will leave it there. Please don't hesitate to join us next Thursday as well at 10 a.m, where we're going to be doing another live if you'd like to continue following us in that series. But as always, it's been a pleasure. See you guys later. Take care.